Hi, this is Martin Drummond with Progressive News. It is Tuesday, March 17th. So, I've officially begun to starve today. I mean, I'm not out of food yet, but I have no more food stamps left. And nobody's willing to come forward and vouch for me. They require a voucher, like a thing where somebody says, yes, they believe that I'm telling the truth or something when I say I've got no income. You can check my previous progressive news that I did where I showed all the stuff off my phone where my house burned. Uh, this is a farmhouse I have in southwest Missouri, and basically I'm so poor that rather than living in it, I made a deal with the guy to fix it up and stuff, but to give me $245 a month for 13 and a half years on a contract, and he would own it and the parcel of land around it. And personally, I think he burned it down. I don't know, but I'm out. I don't have that now. And if you look at the previous progressive news from the other day, it's on here in progressive news. As a matter of fact, here I'll try and show you. So it's that one right there. It's also, if you are at the very top, you can just click on, I believe this is, no, that's not it. No, up here. Up at the very top are announcements, and if you click on them, I think it'll be like the second one or third one or something. My computer. Well, it's not my computer, it's Facebook. For some reason, it takes them a hell of a long time to bring up announcements. But if you bring up the announcements, yeah, it's the second one. Help, I need a fucking note from the government. And, if you click on them, they should take you right to the YouTube video. Yeah. So you can go ahead and do that if you want to know the details about the note from the fire chief and everything. All they want to know is that somebody is willing to vouch for me. I know this is totally stupid. I mean, why can't they just look at the proof? Why they need somebody on the outside to look at the proof? And is it because they just want to put people in a situation where they're pulled into? I mean, if I were somebody who cheated and lied and I got you to sign it, then if they went after you, you'd be screwed if I was lying. But I'm not. So anyway, I've already expressed my opinion. I think that most of this is just an attempt to humiliate you out of collecting your benefits, because I get Obamacare too, which has been gone for over a month now. I haven't been able, if I wanted to, I couldn't go see a doctor. The problem is with the doctor thing is they've, in Kentucky, these assholes have made it so that there's a $3 copay on every visit, and at this point I already owe my doctor $9. So I'm going in there and they're required to take me, and I owe them money. What kind of relationship does that create, right? I mean, nobody likes somebody else owing them money. I'm telling you, man. time just refuses to work. What is that? It's like it'll show me for just a second and then black out. And it's on over here. Well, here, I'll just pop it up. Well, it even goes way faster as you do it. Alright, so let's get to the news. Obviously, my situation is the news. But, you know, I have some stuff saved here. But when it's gone, then I'm starving. And I might as well just go ahead and start starving, right? So, officially on hunger strike. I got a little bit of extra around the waist, so maybe I'll last a long time. I know last time I did this, which was in jail, because I couldn't eat the food. And go ahead and look at anything you want on my YouTube channel. I mean, I was totally innocent. Yeah, I talk about hating people, more or less. Not really hating people, but I talk about the emotions that come up when you know, when somebody fucks you real hard, basically. And you can say that, oh, you don't get those feelings. I mean, these conservatives, they're always like, oh, we're such good little kids. We don't ever feel that way about each other, about anybody. Bullshit. As a matter of fact, you're far worse about it. And you're more likely to actually act on those feelings. I don't act on my feelings. I mean, God, there'd be dead bodies from here to Washington, D.C. if I were to act on those feelings. I don't. I have complete control of my anger. There's plenty of it. I'll be the first one to admit. But, you know, is it really wrong to get angry when somebody threatens to take away your food, like they've done now? I mean, they've actually done it now, so, and all because they want somebody out there. And believe me, I've even contacted some of my best friends and my neighbors. They're not my neighbors anymore because I don't have any money to pay the rent, so I'm just hanging out, you know. But anyway, so it's bad, you know. And then on top of that, this coronavirus thing. But I gotta tell you that I'm no worse off because of the coronavirus. I was already pretty isolated in the first place. So, you know, I go to the store this morning and I carry a bottle of bleach with me and I'm constantly spraying my hands. And I probably won't get it. And anything I touch. And shelves were almost empty. I maybe got lucky because I went at 5 in the morning and I got some stuff that had just made it out on the shelves, but obviously the trucks aren't coming. I mean, I'm kind of wondering, are trucks going to come? Because they're not restocking the shelves. I go on Tuesday morning. Tuesday morning is when everything gets restocked, and all there is a few things that have been restocked, and everything else is blank. Oh, except for really overpriced stuff, you know, so like name brand shit. Some of it was still sitting there, and honestly, I even in this pandemic, I can't bring myself to pay those prices. Never have been able to. I mean, if I do, then I get so much less per month that it really is not enough, you know. I can't afford to pay what these people who have jobs out here. I mean, I'm retired, man. I worked harder than them, longer than them. I deserve to retire. Not to mention the fact that I'm screwed physically. You know, as it turns out, I used to be able to exercise my way out of this, and I'm going to continue to try. But now if I exercise, my back hurts. My neck hurts all the time. So I've been in for disability to my doctor, and they got it started, but now I can't go in because I don't have health care anymore, and I don't have anyway. So they got around to, they've done this a number of times, and they all come to different conclusions. It's so stupid. You get X-rays, and you've got the same injuries that you've had for 40 years, right? I was 17 when a bunch of guys piled on top of me and crushed me into the grass, and basically they broke my back in at least one place and screwed up my neck really bad. And over the years, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. And now I'm at the point where if I start exercising, it hurts a lot and more and more and more. And I'm hoping that there's a point where I can exercise my way out of it, right? Because I'm going to continue to try and do that. As a matter of fact, I need to do my inside exercises today. It's been raining all day. The reason I talk about this is, yeah, I feel sorry for myself a little bit, but I know there's people out there that are a lot worse. Can you imagine? And then take away their Obamacare and their food stamps. What's next? What's next? And at what point do I become so desperate that I say, okay, I got to do something? And what can I do? So, to all those people out there, similar situations to me, my heart goes out to you. I don't have any answers to this. I always tell you how smart I am. But you can be the smartest person in the world and still not be able to come up with any answers, because maybe there aren't any, except for trying to raise an army of poor people and storming the Capitol. I mean, can we do that? Obviously not. People, average people, less than average, I guess, in terms of their income, are in no position to stand up to the government. And they know it. And the rich people know it, and the upper middle class, I guess you'd call them, or whatever, the conservatives, the establishment types, they're supported by the establishment, which they support. They know we're screwed. They're just not willing to budge an inch. Their idea is like survival of the fittest, and that means you got money. And they don't give a fucking shit if everybody else dies. They think that, that's nature. In nature, the strong survive and the weak die. Well, that's really fucking shitty, you know what I mean? I have an option. I'll inherit, millions of dollars when my mom dies, because I gave her all of the money my dad gave to me. What if I took that $1 million and put it into knocking off the people who I think are just fucking evil? Would that even be wrong? Would it? If you know that these people are killing people, murdering people, intentionally murdering people, well, the state believes that it's all right. They execute people all the time. This is all the talk that I was talking about that got me thrown in jail. And I gotta tell you, I have a right to talk about it. I have a right to explore every possibility, because people need to think about it and understand it. In the end, it all comes down to the pain and suffering that is being inflicted. It's democracy run haywire, right? You know, 37% of the population is voting to either make, the rest, the bottom the bottom, I don't know, 10% or whatever. They're basically just trying to kill them off or make them miserable and then take advantage of them. I mean, I don't see any other way to look at it. And I mean, wouldn't that deserve the death penalty? In a just system, wouldn't I be able to walk into a court and say, "Look, I have all this proof that they're intentionally killing people," and all of a sudden, we'd be hanging these people right and left legally. The legal system would take care of it if it wasn't completely bought off by the people who are getting away with this shit. Now, I'm not saying that's what I want to do. I don't believe, I mean, evil people, I don't believe that they're really evil. I just think they're being evil. You know what I mean? Maybe they do need to be reined in. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a complicated subject, and I want to talk to you about the news, so we're going to get off of this now and get on with the news. Okay, so I'm trying something a little different here. I don't even see no matter what you do, you always have problems with the internet and your computer. I mean, the only time that I don't have problems is when I unplug from the internet and I only do things that I know work. You know what I mean? So let's talk about the news a little bit. Okay, so I don't know if I mentioned it, but I went shopping this morning. And so this is working. Don't ask me why, but it is. And I'll tell you what I found out. I found out that, yeah, you can go at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever, but there's still plenty of people there. And when you get up to the front, there's not enough checker outers. Even if you go to the U-scan, it piled up on me. I was there about 5:15 in the morning, and all these people were piled up in the U-scan, and I had to back out and get kind of away from them because you can't be packed in with a whole bunch of people now, because 4 people were, diagnosed with in Kentucky, 2 of them in Lexington. That means there's 100, 1,000 running around out there infected. I'm not willing to take that chance. I don't know about you. Corona. And now that we're talking about it, I find it absurd that the Chinese are getting all indignant about being blamed for the virus. I mean, it originally was called for weeks, if not months, the Wuhan virus. And why? And because it started in Wuhan. Are they to blame? Yes. Yes, they're to blame. Is it their fault? No. You can't. I mean, when I say to blame, is it assured that that's where it started, right? But I didn't mean blame. They're not to blame. I mean, I suppose that's up in the air whether they're to blame. But the point is that, well, I mean, now that I think about it, the bird flu also seems they have a major problem with. It's like they're a petri dish or a stew, and they're these bacteria or virus. I suspect that virus are carried by bacteria. So they get in the bacteria and the bacteria moves from one place to another. Because a virus doesn't have a mechanism for moving from person to person like that. Anyway, that's just something off the top of my head. I don't know if it's true. Not the least bit sure about that, but, something to think about. Let's see. This is a video you might want to look into. It's about how to make your own so let's say your mother needs oxygen, right? And there's none. I mean, if you think toilet paper is hard to get, wait till you find out what these kind of things are going to be like. So he built this thing out of simple things, and you could make it a big tub, right? You just increase the size of everything. But you're going to need all this stuff. You're going to need all of this stuff. The straws and the tubing and everything. You're going to need sodium hydroxide, whatever that is, and I'm not sure where and how to get that. But I'm sure you could order it, as long as we can still get stuff through the mail, right? So you put this thing together, right? You fill it with water, you dump some hydrogen, whatever, sodium hydroxide. Everything's just made with normal tap water. Once you've got all the pieces right, you put it together. This thing right here, I don't know exactly what it is. They say, let me go back a little ways. So he should say right here. So a DC 12-volt power supply, an amp meter. So you're running. I don't know, man. I guess you're running off the wall. Doesn't sound right to me. But one way or another, you can figure this shit out. You plug it in, it starts producing hydrogen and oxygen. So the hydrogen is going into this bottle. And then he's attaching plastic bags to them and filling them up, putting a rubber band around them. going into another. See, they're starting to fill up. There he's showing you the hydrogen bag. It's lighter than air. I assume he's going to blow it up at some point, which will be pretty cool. Nope, he's not going to blow it up. He's going to send it off into the atmosphere to where it's going to become a plastic bag and garbage in our environment. Thank you very much, Thomas Kim, a Chinese guy, obviously. Okay, this guy is talking about buying an old ventilator, and I'm guessing that that is going to be right out. I'm guessing that either the government will have them all, or people will buy them up so fast. And a number of guys are talking about this. See, he bought one for...
And it starts pumping out oxygen.
And he made this elaborate...
Through a desiccant, it goes...
to where he could actually produce... He could actually cut
I've done everything
with
in
the torch.
Nitto air compressor fitting.
And he talks about that in detail. He's Peter Thomas Hall. You can go to his page and look at that if you want. This guy took apart one of the machines, which at this point would be extremely unethical, right? Because all of a sudden you'd have one that didn't work unless he could put it back together properly. And I found this interesting.
Is how you can easily turn common household items or other easy to find supplies into useful aquarium, using sugar and yeast as one method.
Now, the last thing I'd want to do is create a run in hydrogen peroxide, but basically you can take hydrogen peroxide, you can put potatoes in it,
The decomposition of turning the peroxide into water and oxygen will begin. Within a few minutes, oxygen will fill up the bottle and the pressure will begin to build, forcing the oxygen out of the bottle and into your aquarium. Now this will continue on for at least 4 hours at the same rate.
Now yeah, this is for an aquarium, you know, but same thing, it produces oxygen. And if you were in desperate need of oxygen because you're sick with bird flu, this would be, I mean, you just suck on this tube, right? It's producing oxygen and water.
And it can take up to a full day for the peroxide to finish decomposing, at which time you'll be left with a bottle of potato-flavored water with potatoes at the bottom. If you're worried about the foam that it creates getting into your aquarium or the peroxide itself getting into your aquarium, it's not really something you should worry about because the odds of that happening are slim. However, as a precaution, you could easily create a gas separator like you would for a CO2 system, which is as simple as grabbing another water bottle and making it out of that, like I've shown in other videos. Also, if you notice the bubbles are rising too fast and you're really not getting any benefits of adding pure oxygen, you might also want to create some sort of a diffuser like one you would use on a CO2 system for a planted aquarium as well, which will ensure that you saturate the water better with that oxygen. So this is truly a very simple yet valuable project that will come in handy for many of you. However, if you didn't notice, I spent most of my time here helping you understand how it truly works. written the ultimate do-it-yourself.
Okay, so back to the news, because that wasn't actually the news, that was just something I was looking at.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. We begin today's show in Spain, which is now the second European country to impose a nationwide lockdown after 2,000 new coronavirus cases were confirmed in the last 24 hours. And
Okay, so I wanted to talk about something else real quick, because I'd like to talk about just in general how the capitalist system screws everybody at the bottom, right? So my mom's got a lot of money, some of my money. I didn't take my inheritance, but she's a vulnerable senior citizen, and she goes to the senior citizen center to get her taxes done. She had an appointment for April 6th. She sits down with this lady. The lady basically does what a H&R Block or whatever would do. Well, guess what? They've canceled all of that for a year. And what I'm saying is the people at the senior citizen center, a lot of them are really vulnerable. Not necessarily her, because she could always pay H&R Block or get me to help her. I got honors in accounting. And I know all about that shit. I know what's deductible and what isn't. If I don't, I can look it up. But it's really a hardship for other people, right? So, I know some of you are sheep and you've got to have a face to look at. Here's my face. See if I can get it on there a little better. I mean, it's not going to change the fact that you're mainly listening. Stupid people with stupid phone calls. God, like we don't have enough to deal with. So there's that. And then let's look at Spain, because Spain is a fascist country, right? It's been basically run by the Franco regime since they killed off all the communists and won their little war. And this is how they deal with.
Number of deaths doubled. Spain now has the second most cases in Europe after Italy, the fourth highest number worldwide, with more than 11,000 infections and nearly 500 deaths. Spain's Interior Minister, Fernando Grande Marlaska, announced the country was shutting down to slow the spread of coronavirus.
From 0100 GMT this evening and until the declaration of the state of emergency is concluded, only Spanish citizens, residents in Spain, cross-border workers, and those who prove force majeure or situation of extreme poverty will be allowed to enter national territory by land.
As the European Union prepares to vote on a proposal to shut all external borders and impose a 30-day continent-wide foreign travel ban, Portugal's already suspended all passenger air and rail traffic with neighboring Spain until April 15th. At the border checkpoints, Spain is now allowing only Spaniards, residents of Spain, cross-border workers, and diplomats to enter the country.
They are only asking for identification, the national card, nothing else. They should test us for fever because at the end it's a checkpoint, but just for identification.
This comes as the Spanish government announced it's nationalizing hospitals and private healthcare companies to better manage the pandemic. Over the weekend, the Spanish people...
Okay, so this is what I was wanting to talk about, was you know, until it affects rich people, because coronavirus is, yeah, rich people can protect themselves easier. They can arrange for non-contaminated stuff that they need, or decontaminated themselves, and what have you. But as far as the governments go, this is a fascist government in Spain, and boy, when starts to affect rich people, then they're going to nationalize everything, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to use that state of emergency to take everything away from poor people and make sure the rich people get it. I guarantee that. I don't need like a crystal ball to be able to see that.
So during the debate, Bernie Sanders pointed out Joe Biden's atrocious record, and he explained how this shows that Joe Biden didn't have good judgment on numerous issues, right? And this is a leadership issue. If you don't have the foresight to see how the policy, or are we supposed to trust that you're going to represent our interests? Because if you made bad decisions in the
you can pretty much trust that Joe Biden will not do anything in your interest. Just the upper class and the people below them who are on file as, playing ball with the establishment. I like to watch this stuff because, I'm sucked in by the same culture as everybody else. And I can tell you one thing for sure, that it's easy to be sucked in by that culture until you're standing in a hallway listening to rockets fall all around you, whizzing over the roof of the house, guy on the top of the roof firing a machine gun down into the Muslim enclave down below us, and you feel like your legs are going to fall out from under you. But at the same time, I do think it's important. I do think national security is important. I do think it's important for everybody to be able to protect their citizens, the government. Not that I think they really try and do that. I think they try and protect their wealth and stuff. But whatever. So yeah, I do watch these things.
U.S. military has recently conducted a first-of-its-kind training exercise in the Persian Gulf, which included U.S. Air Force AC-130W Stinger II gunship, U.S. Navy P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol planes, and Cyclone-class patrol boats. The idea is to use these three assets to defeat swarms of small boats like the ones that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps deploy in a significant number. The exercise comes at a time when tension between the U.S. and Iran has peaked again, following the attack by Iranian-backed militias that killed 2 U.S. troops and a British service member. As per reports, the exercise took place between March 8th and 9th, 2020, though it was revealed only on March 15th. It's not clear how many AC-130Ws, P-8As, and Cyclones took part in total, but video and images Naval Forces Central Command, or NAVCENT, subsequently released, show at least 1 Stinger II gunship and 3 of the patrol boats, including the USS Monsoon. In this video, Defense Updates analyzes how U.S. military plans to defeat threats of Iranian small boats.
Okay, so obviously they're going to use, in Vietnam it was called the Puff the Magic Dragon, I think. But these planes they have, these massive miniguns or big miniguns, whatever. And I mean, this is all just to keep the oil, hold on to the oil, to protect the Saudi Arabian oil. Yeah, they're gonna bring firepower to bear. And he doesn't talk about it, but I'll bet you there's lots of drones involved.
President Trump said, "We have a problem that a month ago nobody thought about." Well, one 17-year-old Seattle resident did. This is 17-year-old Avi Schiffman, who's been tracking coronavirus cases since December. His website, ncove2019.live. We spoke on Friday.
Yeah, I started this website around Christmas of last year. And I mean, the main goal of it was to provide just an easy way to see the straight facts and the data, without having to make a website that was biased or, full of ads or anything like that. So, I mean, you can go on a phone and just instantly see the quick facts. You can see the total amount of cases, the total deaths, and all that kind of information. And you can get that for individual countries and now U.S. states too, and all kinds of things. So I didn't want to make it hard. You shouldn't have to go through government websites and download a daily PDF that's probably out of date by the time you read it, and have to go through all kinds of complicated things just to see the straight facts. So that was the main reason why
How did you
I wanted to make this website.
How did you know what the Trump administration didn't know? We're talking about last December. I mean, no one was talking about this in the United States. Yes, this was a terrible crisis in China. What first sparked your interest to do this?
Yeah, so I mean, when I started this website, there was less than 1,000 total cases, and they were all just in the Wuhan area of China. So I saw this on the news kind of a long time ago, and I noticed that it was really hard just to find the information, and there was a lot of just misinformation spreading. So I decided it would be kind of cool to create a website and just kind of make it like a central hub of information.
And how did you do it? How did you code this? How do you know how to do this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been programming for about a decade now, but I've only been doing web development for a couple months, so a lot of it was, just kind of learning as I went along. I mean, you can learn anything online. I just kind of, if I had a question, I didn't know how to do a certain thing, I just went on Google and searched it up, figured out how to do it, and eventually got it to work.
So talk about how this website works. I mean, we're using it every single day at Democracy Now! Because right before we go on the air, we want to give people the latest figures. How often are you updating this? How does this automatically update for each country in the world?
Sure. So the entire website updates every minute or so, and the way it works is with something called web scraping. So I'm able to input websites such as, let's say Korea. They have a local government health department kind of website that updates those information, those numbers all the time. So I'm able to web scrape those tables and stuff and get the latest information. And then there's also plenty of news sources as well. So there's plenty of reputable news sources. In Korea, there's one called Yonhap, I believe, that's pretty reputable. And sometimes they're able to get the information faster than those local Korean government sites. So it goes around, for all those kind of places. China, for example, every province has their own health department kind of website, and they have all kinds of information and all the numbers, and I basically just wrote a script that every minute or so just goes to those websites and downloads the latest information.
So talk about the way you've broken it down at the top. When you hit the website, we see it starts out with explain each of the set of numbers before you go into the countries, and then you break down the countries.
Yeah, so right now, as soon as you go to the website, especially on a mobile device, you just see the quick facts. You see the totals of the deceased and infected and recovered, and then you're able to see individual tables that you can sort and search. So let's say I want to sort specifically Europe just by how many deceased there were. Then I'm able to sort it that way, and I can see all that kind of information for individual countries. And I've been working to break it down. So For example, the United States, you can see in the individual states. You can see the same thing for Australia. And later tonight, I'll probably have something for other places too, like India, where you can see the individual kind of provinces, state, region areas.
So you have the number of people affected overall in the globe, and then by country, and then by region. You have the number of people who have died, and you have the number of people who have recovered. Talk about how that came into being.
Yeah, so that was kind of interesting. So that wasn't there for quite a while, and I started to get a lot of emails saying that the site was kind of overly negative, and I decided that it would be really cool if I could show how many people were recovering to give people a more positive outlook and maybe more hope. So I added that to the quick facts, and every single country you can see how many people have recovered, which I think gives people a lot of hope, because you can see in places like Korea, I think they reported more people that recovered today than people that had been infected, which is really big. And I'm also working on things like a vaccine tracker to continue making it more positive, because it shouldn't have to be, super negative and you only see, the amount of people that have died.
What does a vaccine tracker mean, Avi?
Yeah, so around the world, there's, plenty of governments and private health kind of companies that are working on antiviral medications, and there are vaccine trials going on. So right now there is no cure, but plenty of people are working on some kind of preventative measures. So I thought it would be kind of interesting for people to kind of track that, I guess, track their progress and how far they are into these clinical trials, what stage they're in, and all that kind of cool stuff.
So talk about who is watching this. I mean, we're talking about, are you at 12 million now?
Right now I'm at about 35 million.
12? You're at 35 million viewers, users of your website.
The past 24 hours, the past 24 hours has been about 6.5 million visitors, so it's a lot of pressure.
I mean, this is astounding. How many people outside the United States, inside? Where are most of the people viewing your website from?
So what's really interesting is that only about 60% of my traffic is from the United States, which means that I'm able to see it breaking down per country. And actually, I get a lot of visitors from places like Taiwan, and United Kingdom and France, and a lot of places in Europe and Asia visit my website too. So that's why I'm also working on translations, because if you're in Taiwan, you might like to see the website in Chinese more than English. So I'm working on things like that too.
And what have you been able to learn?
Okay, so let's see if we can. Usually they'll put links. No, not really. Well, let's do it this way. Because I do things the same way he does. I Google them. Everybody hates Google. Yeah, so do I. I hate the owner. But the truth is that the world, the universe, is negative and positive, 50-50. And no matter how bad something is, they can't help being good in 50% of the ways. So try and find his website. You'd think with all those people visiting it that it would show up first on Google, don't you think? Okay, well, if one of you go out there, Google it and track it down. I'll give it one shot right here. So this is something here.
This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy.
Let's see if Democracy Now! Put a link on this one. No. So I don't know what to tell you, except for watch the video. Maybe they mention what the name of the site is.
Goodman, during Monday's coronavirus press conference, President Trump said, "We have a problem that a month ago nobody thought about." Well, one 17-year-old Seattle resident did. This is 17-year-old Avi Schiffman, who's been tracking coronavirus cases since December. His website, ncove2019.live. We spoke on Friday.
So it's ncove2019.live. Let's see. Let's open up a new and well, let's just put it in the Google bar here. ncove. Live. So here it is. So the total deceased is 7,000, and I suppose that's pretty accurate. Actually, I think this whole thing is accurate, except for that he can't, you can't estimate the total. Well, you might be able to estimate it. Total number infected. My theory is that the total number infected is the total confirmed times 14, because it takes 2 weeks to incubate, and the numbers hold that up. After 2 weeks, there's always, I'm guessing here, but there's a lot more, right? But 14 times more, I'm not sure, but I'll bet you it's pretty accurate. I mean, not 14, 14 squared, right? At least until it starts to level up off due to, herding and all that kind of stuff. So I think you can say pretty reliably you get a number of total confirmed is basically 200,000 at this point. Whoops. Well, first let's find out what 14 times 14. So 196. So let's just say 200,000. Whoops. Keep doing the same freaking thing. Let's just say 200,000 times 200. God, what's the matter with me? Times 200. So in 2 weeks, if it doesn't level off, which it probably will, so this is kind of a doom and gloom kind of figure, but 40 million people. I'll come back in 2 weeks and see how accurate it is. I can bet you it will be 200 million people. Okay, so that's a nice little thing to know about, right?
This is Democracy Now! I am Amy Goodman. As confirmed coronavirus cases in the U.S. pass 4,500, and I have to emphasize the devastating lack of tests in this country mean that number is probably exponentially higher. But at this point, what we know is there are at least 87 deaths. Residents across 6 counties in San Francisco Bay Area are under some of the strictest measures in the United States. They've been ordered to shelter in place as of midnight last night until April 7th. The Bay Area order affects 7 million people. But what about the people in the area's jails and prisons? San Francisco's new district attorney, Chesa Boudin, and San Francisco public defender are calling on their staffs to keep as many people out of jail as possible. At 2.3 million people locked up in U.S. prisons and jails, the U.S. has the largest proportional prison population in the world. Well, on Friday, we reached Juan Moreno Haynes on the phone at San Quentin State Prison in the Bay Area, just days before 2 prison blocks there were quarantined. At this time, no cases of COVID-19 had been reported in the prison. Juan Moreno Haynes is a member of the Society of Professional Journalists. His recent article for The Appeal is "In San Quentin Prison, Getting the Flu Can Land You in Solitary Confinement." So I began by asking Juan to describe the scene at San Quentin.
Right now, I'm in North Block. That's the main line of San Quentin State Prison, and I'm in a payphone. It actually looks like a payphone, phone number 6, where I'm watching people going past back and forth in the unit on a regular morning in North Block at San Quentin State Prison.
So, Juan, we're talking to you on March 13th. This is very relevant to give a marker for this moment because we're in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. And I'm wondering if you can talk about how you're experiencing that at San Quentin, where you're imprisoned.
So here at San Quentin, we get most of our news from the television, some from the radio. And so we're well aware of what's happening outside the walls of San Quentin. So now when we hear this coronavirus and how deadly that's been worldwide, there's a natural anxiety that exists over here about what's going to happen to us when the public brings this illness to us, because the one thing that we know for sure is that it's going to be brought in from the outside. And the way prisons operate, particularly San Quentin, because of its just unique style, there's more than 3,000 volunteers that come in and out of this prison on an annual basis. And so what the prison has done to prepare itself for this right now is that some of the volunteers that come in for the really big programs have selectively decided not to come in so that they don't bring this illness to us. What the administration has done at this point, and I don't have any official documentation to show this, this is only what I've been told, is that visitations over the weekends have been canceled. What the administration has also done is posted dozens and dozens of signs around on proper hand washing technique and information on how the illness is spread. But that doesn't lift the anxiety level that the men have. When I walk the yard, the guys that know me ask me, Juan, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And my personal opinion is that it's not a matter of if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen. So right now, we're in this state of unknowing, and we're just anticipating how this illness is going to affect our lives.
So, Juan, let me read you an article from CBS. The San Francisco...
Okay, so a little bit of straight from the horse's mouth, personal. You all know that I was falsely accused, falsely convicted, falsely incarcerated. But I always talk about how the experience was invaluable, Because like this guy, I got to see it from the inside. And you'll never get to see it from the inside unless you get thrown in there. Huh? And a lot of people do. Sure. As she said. But here's a story. Okay, so you know, they're doing hepatitis treatment, right? Because people are coming down. I had a guy who, very nice guy, I was very good friends with him, and he came down with it, and I had opted out of the test or the whatever vaccine. It was a vaccine because I really wasn't concerned about it. But when this guy, just one bunk over down below me, 12 guys in a cell, came down with it, it's highly contagious. I became very concerned, right? And so they came along to give people the vaccine, and one of the guys in there declined to get it, and I went out there and told him, you know, I'd like to get it. And then I thought, man, why can't they just give me that guy's vaccine? He just turned it down. And they wouldn't do it. You know? Here I am in a cell with a guy who came down with it. And a guy in my cell because he's getting out that day. And he doesn't have it. Or he can take care of it outside, right? Declines it. And they won't give it to me. And not only that, but they tell me it's going to be several weeks before I could get it. The situation in the prisons is total ignorance. I mean, everything about the way it's run and everything. I mean, yeah, it's really nice when it comes to getting your laundry done, you know, and at some point, you know, you get 3 meals a day. It takes you about a week to get to where you can eat the food, because it just makes you, I'm not going to talk about it. And, you know, the guys in there are really nice for the most part, but they will hound you to death if you're sick. You know, stay away from me. Well, you're in bunks, you know, and if you're in there for a short, if you haven't been in there long, you're on a top bunk, and they make all these silly rules, and they try to screw each other over, and it's always to do with usually to do with these things where they come in 2 or 3 times a week and sell them all this overpriced shit, you know, like Pepsi and, you know, pop and stuff, and bags of chips and stuff. I mean, you pay $2 or $3 for the little bags of chips. I never bought anything. I refused, and I went hungry for a long time. And you know, like I say, I got a little bit of weight to lose. Like now, I lost 40 pounds in 2 months in prison, jail, Lexington Detention Center. So I was really happy, you know. It was like a fat farm. And so like I said, it's 50-50. For every bad thing that happens, there's a good side effect. I know everybody wants to think that, oh, there's certain things that are just bad. But I'm willing to bet that if you really understood what's going on, that there would always be just as much good coming out of stuff that's bad. So like, we don't know what happens when we die, but I'd be willing to bet that for all the horror of dying and all the bad ways you can die, that once you're dead, I hope you know, you find out. But either way, I'll bet you that it's really good. I mean, there's lots of ways I can think of, like, well, if you were in horrible pain and such, and your life was really just a waste of time, then that would be over, right? But I could go on for 2 months, basically, the amount of time I was in there, 2.5 months, talking about all the horrible, all the bullshit. It wasn't horrible. I mean, I don't get freaked out very easy, but it was for other people. And if you were to experience what I experienced, you probably would be really just out of your mind, you know. And I just kick back and do a little bit of meditation, you know. You know. And before long, I'm just like mellow, you know. So, and I was doing that from the moment that they arrested me. Which, by the way, they came along at 9 o'clock at night. I'd been down to the police station 3 times. Said, here, arrest me if you're going to arrest me. But no, they chose to send 6 guys with guns and tasers and everything. I told them I'm staying at my mom's house until we resolve this thing. I'm here. But they wait till 9 o'clock at night, and they're out in the streets all through my neighborhood, like 6 or 7 cop cars with the lights and everything, and then they walk me 2 blocks over, and then they tell me, oh, they open the door and there's like this much room in the back seat, you know, there's no place for your legs, and they're like, well, I guess we better call a paddy wagon. Oh, how long is that going to take? Probably about a half hour. So you're going to make me stand here? No, I'll get into the car. And then I have to direct the guy to get out of the neighborhood. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. I could talk. The first night that I'm in the jail, I just saw so much shit that I can't even remember it. But what I remember most distinctly is there was a TV outside the cell, and it was on. And for some reason, they were showing a whole bunch of guys in orange suits and, again, police lights, you know, sirens and whatever. And I thought, how odd that I'm sitting here in this detention center. And I had people tell me that that detention center was worse than being in a federal prison. That in federal prison you had little libraries and you had all these things, you know. And in here you're locked in a cell with 12 people, 11 people and you. And they rarely let you out to walk around the center of the building outside the cells. And there's people screaming all day and all night and banging until you get out of there. And it took them 10 days to get me out of there. And then by the time I ended up in my cell with the 11 guys, within 2 days I came down with like COVID, coronavirus, Wuhan. I mean, it took me 2 months. I just started to get over it just before they let me out. Now, I don't know what they had in there. I think that this coronavirus has been all over the place already. But for some reason, they've been able to keep it. Because, man, you can't get a flu of any kind, a virus of any kind, that was not as bad as what I had in that jail. Uh, it was lucky all I had to do was lay around all the time, because I probably would have died if I was forced to do stuff. Um, it did everything that they described the coronavirus as doing. I mean, your lungs fill up with liquid, and you. I remember sitting in my, on my bed, and this one, typical young hillbilly type guy, and all he's talking about with everybody is how his greatest truck is and all this shit. And he comes down with it that night, and he's barely had it for, an hour. And I see him make a deal with somebody, and apparently he'd gotten his hands on some serious pain relievers. So supposedly you can get serious pain relievers. I suppose they have to do that if you're in serious pain, but somehow he'd bought 2 or 5 of them or something, and he took them, or he took 2 of them or something. I mean, I was kind of keeping an eye on him, and he got really fucked up, and he was sitting up. Um, you know, this one guy I made friends with, I thought I made friends with, but he never really liked me, just pretended. His name was Rezzy, he's a drug dealer. And he didn't like me being above him because I was sick. But at least I was careful, right? I didn't just sneeze all over. And so I'm right above him in the bunk, and he's kind of acting kind of nasty towards me. Says something like, "Oh, all hail, Martin! All hail, Martin! Here comes Martin! All hail him!" Because I mean, obviously, I'm I'm not afraid to tell people how great I am, right? I mean, I do have a lot of abilities, so why should I hide it? And I told him when we first met, and he seemed very interested, and he asked me a lot of questions. So I told him, about my life. I told him about things like meeting Osama bin Laden and my father raising the Mujahideen and defeating the PLO in Lebanon. All of which I was very much involved with. Uh, not by, not because I wanted to be. I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, right time, or whatever. But anyway, so I think, well, he seems, a normal person would just be impressed, right? But he starts doing that to me, so I immediately switched beds, and then I switched beds again to where I was way over on the other side of the room, and he would look at me like, you know, I don't know what the look was like. Uh, so why did you move all the way across the room? I don't know what the look was, but it was not good. And I just, that's how I handled every situation. I just avoided people because I had a number of people who just got all over me for things, and it was usually because of things that they'd done. And then, so he gets this guy. This guy's tripping on these painkillers, and this guy explodes. I mean, he doesn't blow up. He sneezes, and all this mucus, it's all dripping off of his hands and dripping down on Rezzy down below. But Rezzy was kind of in a mostly white cell, and these white guys all would band together instantly. I had nothing to do with that. I would never do that. I tried to be as good friends with black people as white people, but you know what? It can be really hard to be friends with black people. I mean, one guy, I'd sat in there for, I'd been in the cell for a while, and all he had to do was pay attention. He would have known that I'm a Bernie Sanders, and he would have known what the progressive movement was all about, but he wasn't paying attention. And one day, I said something that could easily be interpreted one way or another, and he just got all upset and talked about how, he acted like I was a Trump, a right wing kind of guy. And then, the next day, when nobody was paying attention, I sat him down and I told him, what's wrong with you? I mean, I'm the least racist white person in this whole prison. And you're treating me like shit. How do you expect to get white people on your side if the ones who are good, if you alienate them like that? I mean, for me, it's not a problem, but I know lots of progressives who, if faced with the same situation, would be just like, well, fuck you, black people, if you're all going to be like that. And they're not all like that. There were plenty of people. But I mean, I had one, I gave him the shirt off my back. They wouldn't give him a t-shirt, and he was supposed to be going into court. And in the morning, just before he was going to court, I hadn't put mine on. I'd just gotten it. And I just said, here, give me, when they finally give you one, give it to me. Give it, so I have one. And he was out of the cell after that, and I never got a shirt off of him. So I never had a t-shirt for the 2 months I was in there. Because I wasn't willing to give them one more fucking penny, man. I paid for so that I could talk to my mom, and that finally I made it so that it was like every other day or whatever, so that the money that I'd put into the phone, which was like $75, and I'm in there, I'm not guilty, so I'm not willing to fork over one penny to them that I don't have to. But they charged me $27 just for putting me in there. And when I bought my mom had put $100 in there. I paid her back. And when she put that in there for me, they grabbed $27.50. They said it was for like the shirt and the underwear and I don't know, a processing fee or something like that. Honestly, I am happy about the good things, that I'm able to recognize the good things. Most people wouldn't. But I do absolutely condemn everybody who works in that system. I don't give a shit whether you feel like you're doing something good or whatever. The responsible thing is to say I won't have anything to do with it. And one guy did that because of me. That's right. So he comes in the cell and he's doing the usual thing. They check around, make sure there's no spray bottles left behind, and the showers and stuff, have a look around. And he's walking past my bunk. I'm on the top bunk in the very back where the shower is, which is an awful place to be because the shower stinks, but I'll tell you what, you get used to it. And as he walks by, I go, you don't have to stay here. You're not locked up like we are. You can leave anytime you want. And he says, well, I get a pretty good benefits, pretty good pay. And I go, okay. And he goes out. And then the next day is like a Friday or something. And I fall asleep and the TV's still on. They usually will leave. Or no, it's not Friday. It's not Saturday, where they leave the TV on sometimes. I don't remember now. But the point is that it was on a day when they're supposed to turn the TV off at 10 o'clock. And it goes off at 10 o'clock every night. And I wake up and the TV's still on. It's like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And I go, man, well, what's the deal? Why did they leave the TV on? And they say, well, it's that. They didn't say it's the guy that I talked to, but I know it is, or they did tell me, or whatever. And he was never there after that, and that's how I know for sure. And they said, well, so and so, and at the time I knew his name, and they knew his name. He quit last night, and the last thing he did was he said, "I'm just going to leave the TV on all night." you know? And so obviously I made an impression on that guy, right? I don't know if I did him any favors. I don't know if he got another job. I mean, he's a pretty professional dude. He probably fits in right perfectly with everything that gets you a job. White, short hair, decent looking. Probably got a job the next day, or probably even knew about a job that he could get any time. Not that that's going to matter. It doesn't matter what kind of job you do at these levels. I don't think you're ever going to find anything you're really satisfied with, because a job is a job. Well, let's watch some more of this.
Public Defender's Office is calling for the immediate release of pretrial jail inmates who are at heightened risk of contracting the coronavirus. In a statement, Public Defender Manaraju said his office would begin filing motions to seek the release of all clients in San Francisco County jails at heightened risk, such as people over 60, those with heart or lung disease, diabetes, cancer, HIV, or autoimmune diseases. And I want to ask, now that is not San Quentin, of course, but what about especially the older population at San Quentin, people who are over 60, people who are over 80? What are you calling for now? Is there any discussion of early release because they are threatened in this pandemic?
Okay, so the situation in CDCR is that by court order they're allowed to keep the population at 137.5% of design capacity. And so what that means is that San Quentin is over design capacity. I can't tell you the exact number specifically for San Quentin, but that. And then the other thing about the San Quentin population is, if you look at the median age of the population at San Quentin, it's higher than the median age of CDCR. So what does that mean to me? That means that we're a particularly vulnerable population. But the mechanisms for release are complicated and cumbersome, and I just really can't. In an ideal world, how do you deal with that? I really can't call for any suggestions for CDCR other than to know that San Quentin is particularly vulnerable.
I'm wondering if you can describe San Quentin on lockdown. Among the issues, for example, how much access do you have to clean water and soap, which is absolutely critical to stopping the spread of the coronavirus?
Okay, so the way supplies are passed out, cleaning supplies are passed out in North Block, is that once a week, the porters who clean the unit goes around and passes out 2 bars of soap per cell. In addition to that, there's disinfectant that you could bring, like, say about a 6 to 8 ounce bottle, and the porters will pass out various types of disinfectant. If we're on lockdown, what happens is that they'll still end up passing out the soap, but then they'll send the porters around with bleach and cleaning supplies, and they'll be wiping down every area where people's hands are touched. As far as like showers are concerned, while on lockdown or modified program, the prisoners are allowed to shower once every 3 days.
If you run out of soap, because simple hand soap and water are by far the most effective in breaking down, in fighting the coronavirus before you get it. Do people have to pay for more soap for the commissary, or will they provide more? And then what happens to those who can't afford it?
Okay, good question. While we're on lockdown, we don't have the capability of going to the canteen to buy soap. So we're completely dependent on the unit to supply us with soap. If they run out of soap or they fall short of soap, typically we borrow from each other, and it kind of works like that. So right now, what people are doing is they're...
So this sounds a lot like the Lexington Detention Center. They come around, they give you, I think, 2 things of toilet paper and 2 things of soap every week, but they don't. Okay. Usually we got the toilet paper, and usually I had rolls of toilet paper available because I didn't use it as much as the other guys. But you use it as a teepee, which is a thing that you build on the seat. I forget what they called it, so that you don't do what they call riding the steel. I mean, because the hepatitis C, which was like the least worst one. But I mean, this guy's face turned all orange. Everybody started looking at him and talking to each other. Man, don't you think that he's probably sick? And it took him till the next day, in the middle of the day, to come in and grab him and his stuff. And we always steal the bottles. What he's talking about is the bottles that they give you right after you eat, and they give you bottles, things, what do you call it? I'm like that, I forget stupid shit. Brooms and these push brooms, big wide ones, and sometimes you don't get them. And I can remember days when there was food all over the place all day because we didn't get one. But you can get a mop once in a while, maybe once or twice a week, and mop the floor. And the inmates, I mean, you think that everybody's bad. I've never seen people who are so concerned about keeping things clean and keeping things disinfected. I mean, they were on top of it. I mean, as soon as that food was done, the whole place just, I mean, 2 or 3 people is all that you could do because of the stuff involved. But you get the bottles. Everything's done with spray bottles. And you spray the shower, and you wash the shower inside the shower, and you wash the little bathroom, and you wash all the tables, and you mop if you can, and you sweep, and the place is spotless when you're done. I mean, because these guys are so concerned about it. And some of the problems that I had was this one guy, the guy who called me like a racist or whatever that I talked about earlier, he was just such a nut about that shit. He was worried about me not using soap in the shower, which I don't always use soap in the shower. Sometimes I just use hot water for a while, and I think it's pretty much, I mean, shit, I was already sick. It's not like I was going to catch anything else. But,
And what did he say? And you can't curse on the air.
And I didn't, unless I was catching the same thing over and over. But so he would, not just me, everybody in the cell. He thought he was supposed to make sure everybody kept everything clean. If you know me, I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I don't think that a lot of the stuff that we do is consumer culture. It's designed to make us buy shit. And a lot of it is totally unnecessary from what I've seen. I mean, I know I'm perfectly healthy. I don't have anything. Uh, Not at the moment, and not for years and years. Last time I caught something was because my freaking next door neighbors, both of them, the man and the woman, husband and wife, both work in hospitals and stuff. And they fucking brought it home, and their kid got it. And my mom loves their kids. She was only 2 or 3 years old at the time, and so my mom was constantly interacting with them. She got it. I took care of her. I got it. Right? And same thing for, I can tell you immediately. I said, Mom, you want me to come over here every day and take care of you? You don't go near those people, okay? Because that's how she'd get it if she got it, and then I'd get it. And she's basically been on lockdown because she knows, you know, I'll take off. Nah, I wouldn't. I'd stay here and take care of her and get it too. Fuck. I couldn't leave her alone. But anyway, so let's listen to more of this. This is interesting stuff, I think. And it reminds me of what happened to me in jail. And I'm sure a lot of these guys are innocent too. There's always a few. Not quite as innocent as me, but I mean, there's all kinds of people in there that, you know, I talk to everybody. And like the first guy, the guy I went in with, I was processed with. And we went to the same cell and we kind of stuck together. He was a cool guy. So he's in there because he bought a car off of Craigslist and didn't know it was stolen. And he didn't. You know, he wasn't smart enough to say, too good to be true, right? And so they arrest him for that, and they don't really give him any time. He's only in there for a couple of months or something, you know, for grand theft. You know, it's his first time and everything. Well, while he's in there, he becomes addicted to all the pills that are going around, and they're, you know, they make you open your mouth. I didn't deal with the health people there, so I didn't have to do it, but I saw everybody go out there, get in line, and they take a little drink, and but somehow they're able to hide the pills under their tongue somehow, right? And then they bring them into the cell, and you see them, they're chopping them up, you know, avoiding the cameras and going into the bathroom and doing it so the cameras can't see them and all that kind of shit. So people get hooked on pills, and apparently there's some pretty strong stuff, you know? And I never saw any illegal stuff. Like I was told that you could get high, could find weed. Never saw it. I don't know if the place was fairly well locked down while I was there or not, or whatever. But I didn't see that. They would have to sneak it in, right? I mean, and lots of people talked about how, oh, you know, if I knew I was going to be arrested, I would shove a bunch of pills up my ass, and then I'd have those, and I'd be able to barter for all kinds of shit. So he gets hooked on pills while he's in there, right? And he gets busted. And so they offer him drug court, which is a joke. So he does drug court, And he was in there because he'd violated his drug court stuff. And he was only in there for 5 or 10 days or something. So, you know, I mean, he's basically an innocent guy who ends up getting hooked on drugs because he's in jail. And now he's forever in the drug court. You know, he's a super nice guy, and I say that he's innocent. I say he's innocent, and there's just a lot of them. And then, so there's me at one level, I'm completely innocent. There's guys like that who are really just victims. And then there's the guys who actually were doing stuff, you know, stealing sunglasses, tried to walk out of a Walmart with speakers in his pants. Apparently he has these special pants that he can hide things in. Gets chased down in a parking lot. Somebody else. I mean, there were as many stories as there were people in there. And just how many did I get to talk to was what it came down to. A lot. I talked to a lot of people. Those people in the third tier who were actually doing something. They were either drug dealing or they were doing drugs and got caught with possession or something, or they were stealing stuff. They're a lot like people like you and me who either lose their job, source of income, and are under immense pressure, or they just refuse to bow down to the system. So their solutions are deal drugs so you don't have to work, do drugs so you forget about everything, or steal so that you have money and you don't have to work for the asshole, right? And in a way, you know, they're trying to stand up to the system and get away with it, but they got caught. They were the ones who got caught. And in that respect, you know, I think a lot about how you say that, well, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, right? And I look at those guys the same way. You know, you may think of them as horrible, awful people who try and steal from you and things like that. And I understand, you know, that's scary shit, right? Somebody breaking into your home, maybe has a gun or a knife or something, who knows? And I agree, it's scary. But the way I look at these guys is they're the only ones, and no matter how misguided they are, because they're stealing from the wrong people 90% of the time. You know, they're stealing from the guy who it's really going to hurt him, you know. Where's my car? It was out here this morning. Or whatever. You know. But at the same time, they're the ones who are standing up to the system in a real way. They're the only ones. All of us are sitting out here talking about how horrible the system is and how it, and the people who maintain it and need to be fixed, you know. I mean, we need to fix the system. So, you know, I mean, they're actually going out there and trying to do something. Just to either escape the system, we all just take it, you know what I mean? I do. But they don't. And when they get caught, they end up in these places.
They're like making sure they go into the canteen and they're buying supplies, particularly cleaning supplies and food. The experienced prisoner knows to stock up when there's potential for a lockdown, because once you go on lockdown, you don't know how long that's going to last, and things like food and cleaning supplies are essential, because if you're relying on the state to give you these supplies, it's just not going to be adequate.
You know, Juan, you wrote a prophetic piece.
Yeah, and within the first 2 days, when I was still in, before you get into general population, somebody stole a bunch of my stuff, and I didn't have toothpaste, soap, and I remember some guy comes to the cell and says, "Hey man, if you're going to get soap, you need to get it now." And the guy goes out ahead of me, and I'm following him, and he walks up to this cage full of soap and a few other things, and grabs a bunch of them. And so I thought we were supposed to be doing it, and I grabbed a couple of bars of soap because I needed a couple of bars of soap. And I got back and I sat down and I realized, wait a minute, I just stole stuff in a prison where you would get fucking screwed to the wall if you got caught doing it. And I freaked out, man. I took my bar of soap and I stuck it in the thing in the shower, and just kept the one to replace the one I had, so I could say, well, yeah, that's the one they gave me. So you see how just even though you're doing the right thing all the time, I mean, I was paranoid of doing the wrong thing, but how easy it is to get trapped and not realize that you're doing something like that, doing something wrong. And well, it's not wrong. I needed some soap, but they would come down on me like a ton of bricks, and there's cameras. I was like, oh man, when they realize there's all this shit missing out of that cage, they're gonna just look at the cameras, and I'm gonna be busted. I'm gonna be fucked. And I really thought, because I went through the whole thing without one incident. Didn't get into a fight. Had people walk right up to my face, screaming in my face. Had people telling me I'm gonna rob you, and all kinds of stuff. And I just sat there and laughed at them, because if you know anything about me, well, you don't. You don't have to, but I'm pretty sure I would have come out on top in just about any situation. I mean, I know things I can do that would bring, a 350-pound, muscle-pound guy down crying on his knees. And I've done it before, so I know. Because really, you end up in more fights outside of jail than inside. They're not gonna do anything usually, because within seconds there's gonna be 2 or 3 cops on you, and within another 20 seconds there's gonna be like 15, and they've got this shield that is electrified, and when they hit you with it, so if you come at them and it's right out in front of them, I saw it used, and I didn't realize that it was electrified, and then people were talking about it later, and I realized what they were doing. And just the sheer number of them, and it's not like they're going to treat you with kid gloves, no matter whether you started the fight or not. And they have this rule: you go into solitary even if you didn't start the fight, so you get punished. And I said, man, well, the thing is that's because you're not allowed to fight back. So they tell you to just curl up in a ball and try and block the punches as much as you can until they get there. I was like, fuck that, man. Somebody comes at me, I'm gonna tear them a new ass. You know what I mean? I mean, I'm a big guy. I went in there 280 pounds, 6'2". Uh, a lot of it's still muscle. Not only that, but taekwondo, ninjutsu, uh, all kinds of weapons training and stuff. I'm not afraid, but I want to be able to uh, defend myself without ending up 3 days in solitary. But then again, me, I love solitary. So it's an escape, you know, you get away from all the bullshit. But it's more about not wanting to be told what to do when you did nothing wrong. I mean, if somebody comes up to me and acts like he's going to kill me, why shouldn't I be able to very quickly knock him out or whatever? I deserve 3 days of solitary for that. You know, and this goes to another thing. So I'm sitting in the courtroom, and my lawyer hasn't shown up. So I'm going to represent myself that day. They let all the lawyers go ahead. So I have to sit there for like 3 hours. And I said to this guy, you know, I'm representing myself. Why don't I get called in line like everybody else? Why can't I even get in line? Oh, because you're not a lawyer. I'm representing myself. I'm my own lawyer. I am a lawyer. No, you're not a lawyer, so you can't. And then the guy looks at me and says, life's not fair. I'm sitting there in a courtroom, the place where we go for justice. That's what fair is, right? Justice is fairness. And a dumbass cop says life isn't fair in a courtroom. I mean, seriously, you can't make this stuff up. You know, this would be something in a comedy, a satire. Life's not fair. All right. Well,
called in San Quentin prison, getting the flu can land you in solitary confinement. When we broadcast this, San Quentin may be on lockdown, maybe not. We maybe won't be able to reach you. But can you talk about what happens when you get sick at San Quentin?
So we live in such close proximity that in the 13 years...
I can tell you what happens. You just get sick and you sit there in your cell. I mean, unless you get hepatitis or you start bleeding out your eyes, they're not even going to want to talk to you. I mean, they totally ignore you unless they think they want to give you a bunch of shit. I mean, I told you, man, everybody, I mean, there were 3 or 4 people in my cell the whole time I was there who got the same thing I had. And I mean, it was debilitating and it was harsh. And you had to go out there when they came around into the middle of the building and then they'd set up. You had to go out there and make your case, and they would set you up. They told me it would be 2 weeks, and I was like, you know what? In 2 weeks I'll probably be over this. So just give me my paper that I filled out back. And they did. Happily, because I'm one less person that they're going to have to deal with. So basically they'll do nothing until you turn orange. Right? or start bleeding out your eyes, or if you take your mat out, like if you're on the second bunk and you don't feel like getting up and down, and lay it on the floor, and then they'll come in and tell you can't lay your mat out, and you'll be like, well, I can't help it, I can't get up and down, and then they have to start thinking about, are we going to pick this guy up and put him in his top bunk every time after he gets down every time? I mean, it starts to become like one of these things, a rock and a hard stone. I had no intention about talking about this stuff today, but this story is here. So we'll move on. See what else is going on. Actually, I'm at 1 hour and 51 minutes already. This has been a long segment. And I don't see anything particularly salient in here right now, so I think I'll leave it here. I'll leave you with let's see. Gonna let you listen to one of my songs. Gonna let you listen to Heaven's Resurrection. And that'll be it for me today. I want to thank you for watching Progressive News. I may be biased, but I think that I think I'd watch, like, I'd be riveted to it's interesting stuff. A lot of personal perspective, thanks to our criminal system.
blame you.